The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Vorthak territory like a storm made of metal and fire. 2,847 ships spread across space in perfect formation. Every vessel flew the flag of Earth, but they came from every corner of human space. Admiral Bo Young stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Terrible Purpose. The name had been chosen carefully. This wasn't conquest or expansion. This was vengeance with a purpose. "Ma'am, the Vorthak fleet is moving to intercept," reported Captain Minho. "They're broadcasting demands for us to leave their territory." Bo Young studied the tactical display. The Vorthak had a strong fleet, but they were spread thin across their empire. More importantly, they still didn't understand what they were facing. "Open a channel to all ships, Lai," she ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies, including Vorthak military channels." When the channel opened, Bo Young's voice carried to every ship in both fleets. "This is Admiral Bo Young of the Terran Defense Force. We are not here for conquest. We are not here for territory. We are here for our children. Return them, and we will consider mercy." The response came from the Vorthak flagship. "This is Fleet Commander Vextor. You are in violation of our territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Bo Young looked at the image of Haven's Rest on her personal screen, the dead cities, the melted glass. Nari's final message. "Commander Vextor," she said quietly, "you are about to learn why humans spent 100 years choosing peace. It wasn't because we were afraid of war. It was because we were afraid of what we become when we fight." The battle began when the Vorthak opened fire. Their plasma cannons lit up space with deadly energy, striking human shields that held firm. The aliens expected to face converted civilian vessels with improvised weapons. Instead, they discovered that humanity's civilian engineers had been very busy. Captain Minho led the first wave in what used to be the cargo hauler Steady Prophet. When its holds opened, they didn't release grain or trade goods. They released a cloud of missiles that moved with impossible precision, each one guided by AI systems that could think faster than any living pilot. The passenger liner Safe Harbor deployed fighter squadrons from what had been dining halls and entertainment decks. The small craft moved like dancing flames, too fast for Vorthak weapons to track. The research vessel Quiet Contemplation had been studying black holes and neutron stars. Its sensor arrays had been converted into weapons that could focus gravity itself, crushing Vorthak ships like tin cans. "This is impossible," screamed Commander Vextor. "These are civilian ships. Where did these weapons come from?" Dr. Yunji, broadcasting from the Terrible Purpose, answered him. "You wanted to see human nature, Commander. Here it is, we protect our own. And when our own are threatened, we become something else entirely." The battle for the frontier world of Bloodfang lasted 14 hours. When it ended, the planet's orbital defenses were debris floating in space. The Vorthak fleet was destroyed or fled, and human forces had established a landing zone on the planet's surface. But this wasn't about taking territory. This was about finding their people. Captain Sora led the ground assault with surgical precision. Her forces moved through Vorthak positions like they were solving a puzzle. They avoided civilian areas and focused on military targets, especially the prison camps where human captives were being held. "Remember," she told her soldiers as they loaded into dropships, "we're not here to conquer. We're here to rescue. But if anyone gets between us and our people..." She didn't need to finish. Everyone understood. The Vorthak soldiers were trained for brutality and conquest. They had never faced humans in ground combat before. They discovered that humans fought with a combination of cold calculation and protective fury that was terrifying to face. Commander Jamin's Special Forces team infiltrated the main detention facility on Bloodfang. What they found inside made hardened soldiers weep with rage. Human prisoners had been subjected to medical experiments. Families had been separated. Children had been tortured to test human pain tolerance. Jamin found the facility's commander, a Vorthak officer named Grixnull, hiding in his office. "Please," the alien begged. "I was following orders. This is how we treat all prisoners." "It's nothing personal." Jamin looked at the alien for a long moment. Behind him, his medics were treating human children who might never recover from what had been done to them. "Nothing personal," Jamin repeated quietly. "You tortured children to see how much pain humans can feel. And you think it's nothing personal?" "He didn't kill the Vorthak commander. That would have been too easy." Instead, he arrested him and marked him for war crimes trial. But the look in Jamin's eyes promised that justice would come eventually. The rescued prisoners were evacuated to human medical ships, but many were barely alive. The testimonies they gave painted a picture of systematic cruelty that had been designed to break human spirit. When these reports reached Earth, something changed in human space. The last restraints came off. The mission parameters shifted from rescue to something darker. "Ma'am," Captain Su Jin reported to Admiral Bo Young, "we're receiving new orders from Earth. Protocol 7 has been upgraded to Protocol 7 Alpha." Bo Young closed her eyes. Protocol 7 Alpha was theoretical warfare designed not just to defeat an enemy, but to ensure they could never threaten anyone again. "Understood," she said. "Signal all ships. We're no longer just here to rescue our people. We're here to make sure this never happens again." Across the Vorthak Empire, the news spread like wildfire. The humans weren't just winning battles. They were systematically dismantling Vorthak civilization. Their ships moved with precision that seemed impossible. Their soldiers fought with controlled fury that broke Vorthak morale. Overlord Krex watched his empire crumble and finally understood what they had awakened. The humans weren't just angry. They were methodical. They weren't just fighting a war. They were solving a problem, and the problem was the Vorthak Empire itself. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," he ordered desperately. "Tell them the humans have gone insane. Tell them we need intervention before they wipe us out completely." But the galaxy was watching in fascinated horror as a species they thought they knew revealed capabilities that dwarfed their own. The peaceful builders had become something else entirely, and they weren't finished yet. As human forces advanced deeper into Vorthak space, Admiral Bo Young looked at the tactical displays showing their progress. In 3 days, they had accomplished what most species would need months to achieve. But she wasn't satisfied. Somewhere in Vorthak space, human prisoners were still suffering. Children were still being tortured by aliens who thought cruelty was strength. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "All ships advance. We don't stop until every human is free and every Vorthak who hurt them faces justice." The storm was far from over. If anything, it was just getting started. The Vorthak Empire was dying, and its leaders knew it. Overlord Krex stood in his war room, watching red markers disappear from the tactical display as human forces advanced through Vorthak space, like a scalpel cutting through flesh. "Sir, we've lost contact with the 7th Fleet," reported General Thakmore. "The humans destroyed them near the mining world of Iron Fang. No survivors." Krex slammed his fist on the table. "How is this possible? 3 days ago, these were peaceful traders and scientists. Now they're crushing our military like it's made of paper." "Sir," his communications officer said hesitantly, "perhaps we should consider surrender terms." "Never," Krex roared. "The Vorthak Empire does not surrender to inferior species." But even as he spoke, Krex knew they were facing something beyond their understanding. The humans weren't fighting like any species he had encountered. They weren't trying to conquer territory or claim resources. They were systematically dismantling everything that made the Vorthak Empire function. "Captain." Hyunsu led the human engineering corps to the industrial world of Forge Prime. The planet produced weapons and ships for the entire Vorthak military. Instead of bombing it to rubble, his teams did something more precise and more terrifying. They disabled everything. "Sir, we've completed the neural virus installation," reported Engineer Yubin. "Every automated system on the planet is now under our control. We can turn their factories on and off like light switches." Hyunsu nodded as he watched Vorthak workers standing helplessly beside silent assembly lines. "Make sure the civilian population has food and medical supplies. We're not here to starve people. We're here to make sure they can't build weapons anymore." This was happening across the Empire. Human forces would arrive at a Vorthak world, defeat the military garrison with frightening efficiency, then systematically disable every piece of military infrastructure while leaving civilian systems untouched. The psychological impact was devastating. The Vorthak had built their entire culture around strength and conquest. Now they watched helplessly as aliens they had dismissed as weak dismantled their empire with surgical precision. Dr. Subin worked in her mobile laboratory aboard the medical ship Gentle Healing. The irony of the ship's name wasn't lost on her as she developed weapons that targeted Vorthak biology specifically. "The neural implants are their weakness," she explained to her research team. Every Vorthak soldier has implants that enhance their aggression and suppress their empathy. It's how they turn ordinary people into killers. So we disable the implants? Asked Dr. Changmin. Better. Subin smiled coldly. We reprogram them. Instead of enhancing aggression, they'll suppress it. Any Vorthak with military implants will become physically incapable of violence. The virus spread through Vorthak military units like wildfire. Soldiers who had been bred for brutality suddenly found themselves unable to hurt anyone. Some broke down crying as their suppressed empathy returned. Others simply sat down and refused to fight. Commander Il-sung led the Information Warfare Division from the communications ship Truth Speaker. His mission was to broadcast the testimonies of rescued human prisoners throughout Vorthak space. The recordings were devastating. Human children describing the experiments performed on them, parents talking about watching their families being torn apart, scientists explaining what the Vorthak had done to study human pain tolerance. Sir, we're getting reports from inside Vorthak civilian centers, reported Communications Officer Jung-un. The broadcasts are causing riots. Their own people are turning against their government. Il-sung watched the feed from a Vorthak city, where civilians were demanding the arrest of military officials. Good. Let them see what their empire really was. Let them understand what they supported. But the most terrifying aspect of humanity's campaign wasn't their weapons or their tactics. It was their restraint. At every step they demonstrated that they could completely destroy the Vorthak species, but chose not to. Captain Daewon commanded the surrender negotiations for the 3rd Vorthak Fleet. The alien admiral Torvex sat across from him in the conference room of the captured battleship Ironclaw. You could have destroyed us, Torvex said quietly. Your weapons are beyond anything we imagined. Why didn't you just wipe us out? Daewon looked at the alien commander with cold eyes. Because that's not who we are. We could glass your worlds. We could sterilize your species. We choose not to because we're not monsters. But remember this, we always have that choice. The words haunted Torvex long after his surrender. The humans weren't showing mercy because they were weak. They were showing mercy because they were strong enough to choose it. The Galactic Council watched in horror as the species they thought they knew revealed capabilities that dwarfed their own. Emergency sessions were called daily as representatives tried to understand what was happening. They're not just winning, reported the Crystalline Hegemony's observer. They're rewriting the rules of warfare itself. They're treating the Vorthak Empire like a medical problem that needs to be solved, not an enemy that needs to be destroyed. Ambassador Wu Jin addressed the council one final time before returning to Earth. You wanted to see human nature when we're pushed too far. This is it. We don't just defeat our enemies. We fix them. We make them better than they were, and we make sure they can never hurt anyone again. On the Vorthak homeworld, Overlord Krex made his final broadcast to the galaxy. The humans have gone beyond warfare, he said, his voice breaking. They're not conquering us. They're reforming us. They're taking apart everything we are and rebuilding it into something else. He was right. Human forces surrounded the planet. Their weapons powered down but clearly visible. Admiral Bo Young's terms were simple. Surrender completely, return all human prisoners, submit to war crimes trials, and accept permanent monitoring. But there was one more condition that shocked the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire would spend the next century dedicated to humanitarian service, helping rebuild worlds damaged by their previous conquests. You will learn what it means to protect instead of destroy, Admiral Bo Young told the assembled Vorthak leadership. You will discover that strength comes from helping others, not hurting them. And you will do this under human supervision until we're satisfied that you understand. The transformation wasn't optional. Human technology had infiltrated every Vorthak system. Their weapons were disabled. Their ships were monitored. Their soldiers were physically incapable of violence. But more than that, they were being forced to help others. Vorthak engineers who had once built weapons of war now built hospitals and schools. Soldiers who had tortured prisoners now worked in refugee camps, helping beings their empire had displaced. Some Vorthak resisted, but most discovered something surprising. Helping others felt better than hurting them. The neural modifications had returned their natural empathy, and many found themselves genuinely wanting to make amends for what their empire had done. Captain Young-ho oversaw the final liberation of human prisoners from the Vorthak capital world. Of the 50,000 taken from Haven's Rest, 47,000 were still alive. Many would need years of medical treatment, but they were free. Among the survivors was Nari, Captain Dong-Su's daughter. She was barely alive, scarred by months of torture and experimentation, but her eyes still held the same intelligence and determination they had always shown. "Dad?" she whispered when she saw him in the medical bay. Dong-Su knelt beside her bed, tears streaming down his face. "I'm here, sweetheart. We came for you, all of us. The whole galaxy came for you." Nari managed a weak smile. "I knew you would. I told them. I told them they didn't understand humans. We protect our own." As the last human prisoners were evacuated and the Vorthak leadership was taken into custody for trial, the galaxy began to understand what had really happened. The peaceful builders had reminded everyone that peaceful and powerless were not the same thing. The Vorthak Empire was gone, replaced by something humanity would help them build. Something better, something that protected instead of destroyed. And throughout the galaxy the message was clear: never threaten human children. The consequences would last for generations. The Vorthak homeworld lay silent beneath the human fleet. Admiral Bo Young stood on the bridge of the Terrible Purpose, looking down at a planet that had once been the heart of a brutal empire. Now it was something else entirely. "Ma'am, the final surrender documents have been signed," reported Captain Sujin. "All Vorthak military forces have laid down their weapons. The prisoners have been transferred to our custody." Bo Young nodded but felt no satisfaction. Victory had come too late for the people of Haven's Rest. Too late for the children who had died in Vorthak laboratories. Justice would have to be enough. The terms of surrender were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Usually, defeated empires were carved up between the victors or forced to pay massive reparations. The humans wanted neither territory nor wealth. They wanted transformation. "Attention, citizens of the former Vorthak Empire," Bo Young broadcast to the planet below. "Your government chose to torture children to test their theories about human weakness. They were wrong, but their crimes were not committed by all of you. You have a choice now. Help us build something better or live under supervision forever." The response surprised everyone, including the humans. Across Vorthak space, civilians emerged from their homes carrying white banners. Many were weeping as they saw, for the first time, recordings of what their military had done to human prisoners. On the planet below, former Vorthak soldiers worked alongside human engineers to convert weapons factories into medical facilities. General Thakmor, who had once commanded invasion fleets, now supervised the construction of schools for refugee children. "I don't understand," he told Captain Hyun-soo, as they watched Vorthak workers teaching human orphans to read. "Why are you helping us?" "We killed your people." Hyun-soo looked at the children playing together, human and alien side by side. "Because that's what we do. We build things. We fix things, even when those things tried to destroy us." The war crimes trials took place on the neutral station of Justice Prime. Captain Young-ho served as one of the judges, listening to testimony from both human survivors and Vorthak civilians who had known nothing about the atrocities. Nari, still recovering from her ordeal, testified about her months in captivity. Her voice was steady as she described the experiments, the torture, the casual cruelty of soldiers who saw humans as animals. "But I want to say something else," she added at the end of her testimony. "The doctor who treated my wounds after each session was Vorthak. She risked her life to help prisoners whenever she could. Her name was Veltara, and she saved dozens of human lives." The revelation that some Vorthak had secretly helped human prisoners changed everything. The trials became not just about punishment, but about understanding how a civilization could produce both monsters and heroes. Dr. Veltara was called as a witness. The elderly Vorthak physician limped to the stand, bearing scars from beatings she had received for showing kindness to prisoners. "I became a doctor to heal people," she said simply. "When I saw what we were doing to the humans, I couldn't stand by and do nothing. They were people just like us. They had families, children, dreams. How could we hurt them and call ourselves civilized?" The judge panel, led by Captain Young-ho, faced an unprecedented situation. Some Vorthak leaders were clearly guilty of war crimes. Others had been following orders in a system that punished disobedience with death. And some, like Dr. Veltara, had risked everything to do what was right. The sentences reflected this complexity. The worst criminals faced life imprisonment on a prison planet, where they would spend their remaining years helping to rebuild what they had destroyed. Middle-level officials received terms of supervised service in humanitarian organizations. and those who had helped human prisoners were granted amnesty and offered positions in the new government. But the real transformation was happening across former Vorthak space. The neural modifications that had once enhanced aggression were being replaced with implants that enhanced empathy and cooperation. Vorthak citizens who had never questioned their empire's brutality suddenly found themselves capable of genuine compassion. Captain Jin A, granddaughter of Admiral Bo Young, commanded one of the new mixed-species exploration fleets. Her crew included reformed Vorthak officers who had chosen service over shame. "Captain," reported her first officer, "Commander Velmon, formerly of the Vorthak military, we're approaching an uncharted system. Sensors detect signs of civilization." Ginny smiled. Her grandfather had fought to free human prisoners. Her grandmother had rebuilt the Vorthak into something better. Now she was exploring the galaxy with former enemies who had become friends. "Take us in slowly," she ordered. "Standard first contact protocols. We come in peace." The phrase "we come in peace" had new meaning when spoken by a mixed human Vorthak crew. The galaxy had learned that these two species working together could accomplish impossible things. On the rebuilt world of Haven's Rest, Nari walked through gardens that had been planted where cities once stood. The planet would never again support millions of people, but it had become something beautiful. A memorial garden where every flower represented someone who had died in the massacre. Beside her walked Dr. Veltara, now serving as the planet's chief medical officer. The former enemy had become one of Nari's closest friends during her recovery. "Do you ever regret it?" Nari asked. "Helping us, I mean. Your own people called you a traitor." Veltara smiled sadly. "The only thing I regret is that I didn't do more, that I was afraid for so long. Your species taught us something important, that true strength comes from protecting others, not hurting them." The Galactic Council had been reformed as well. The old system that had allowed strong species to prey on weak ones was replaced with something unprecedented. A true democracy where every species had an equal voice. Protected by human guarantees, Ambassador Wu Jin, now serving his third term as council president, addressed the assembled representatives from 97 different worlds. 50 years ago, my species was forced to choose between our principles and our people," he said. "We chose our people, but we didn't abandon our principles. Instead, we found a way to protect both. Today, that same protection extends to all of you." The phrase "human protected" had become the galaxy's most treasured designation. It meant absolute safety from aggression, guaranteed rights for all citizens, and the promise that bullies would face consequences that lasted for generations. Young aliens learned about the 6 days of war in school, but not as a tale of human dominance. They learned it as a story about the importance of choice. Humans had chosen to be peaceful for 100 years. When forced to choose violence, they had chosen precise, limited violence with clear goals. And when the fighting was over, they had chosen to build rather than destroy. On Earth, a monument stood in the center of New Geneva, where the Galactic Council had first convened. It was simple, a statue of a human child reaching out to touch hands with an alien child. The inscription read, "We protect our own. All of them." Captain Dongsu, now retired and living on New Earth, often visited his daughter Nari on the rebuilt Haven's Rest. She had chosen to stay on the world where she had suffered so much, determined to help it heal. "Do you think it was worth it?" she asked him during one visit. "All the fighting, all the destruction? Could we have found another way?" Dongsu thought about the question carefully. Around them, human and Vorthak children played together in the memorial gardens. Former enemies worked side by side to tend the flowers that honored the dead. "I used to think violence was never the answer," he said finally, "but sometimes violence is the question, and the answer is only enough to stop the hurting. We didn't try to wipe them out. We tried to fix them. And it worked." Nari nodded, watching a group of Vorthak students placing flowers on the memorial to human victims. "They're different now. Not just because of the neural modifications, but because they choose to be different. That's what makes it real." As the sun set over Haven's Rest, the memorial gardens glowed with bioluminescent flowers that had been Nari's final discovery before the massacre. They bloomed only at night, turning the entire planet into a gentle constellation of remembrance. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Never threaten human children. Never mistake peace for weakness. And never forget that some doors once opened can never be fully closed, but sometimes that's exactly what the universe needs. Sometimes the angels need to remember they were once warriors, and sometimes the warriors need to remember they can choose to be angels again. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't military. It was proving that enemies can become friends, that monsters can be reformed, and that the strongest choice is often the choice to show mercy. The children of 100 worlds slept safely under human protection, watched over by guardians who had learned that true strength lies not in the capacity for violence, but in choosing when not to use it. Some doors can never be closed, but the right people can choose what comes through them. The emergency session of the Galactic Council took place on the neutral station of Harmony Point. Representatives from 37 different species gathered in the great chamber to discuss what they were calling the Haven's Rest incident. Ambassador Wu Jin sat in the human section, listening to the debates with growing anger. The crystalline hegemony wanted to impose trade sanctions on the Vorthak Empire. The Aquatic Federation suggested cutting off diplomatic ties. The insectoid swarms recommended patient negotiation to reach understanding. None of them were talking about the 2 million dead humans. None of them mentioned the 50,000 people who had been taken for experiments. The humans must not overreact, said Ambassador Zilth of the Peaceful Union. Violence only leads to more violence. This tragedy should be resolved through proper channels. Wu Jin stood up slowly. The chamber fell silent. In 100 years of membership, humans had never interrupted council proceedings. You think we're saints, Wu Jin said. His voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the chamber. You think we're naturally peaceful and gentle. You're wrong. We chose to be better than our nature, but you just reminded us what we really are. The other ambassadors looked confused. Humans were the mediators, the builders, the peaceful ones. Everyone knew that. We have a saying on Earth, Wu Jin continued. Beware the anger of a patient man. You're about to understand what that means. Back in human space, changes were happening that the galaxy couldn't see. Dr. Yujin walked through the halls of the Advanced Weapons Research Facility on Mars. For 50 years, this place had been nearly empty. Humans had developed terrible weapons during their expansion to the stars, then locked them away and tried to forget about them. Now Yujin was opening vault after vault of forbidden technology. Weapons that could crack planets, viruses that could rewrite alien DNA, ships that could move faster than anything else in the galaxy. Humans had always had the knowledge to wage total war. They had simply chosen not to use it. Sir, are you sure about this? Asked his assistant, Dr. Heejin. Some of these weapons are banned by 17 different treaties. Yujin looked at the reports from Haven's Rest on his desk. Pictures of dead children, recordings of Nari's last message. The treaties were made for peacetime. This isn't peacetime anymore. Admiral Bo Young stood in the command center of Luna Base, looking at displays showing every human ship in the galaxy. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, research vessels, mining ships. All of them were changing course, heading for Earth or the nearest military depot. Ma'am, the civilian ships are requesting weapons, reported Captain Sujin. Even the little survey vessels want missile pods. Bo Young nodded. She had activated Protocol 7, something most humans thought was just a training exercise. It was the plan for what would happen if someone tried to wipe out humanity. Every human ship, no matter how small or peaceful, would become part of the fleet. Give them whatever they want, Bo Young said. Our engineers have had 100 years to think about this. They've been very creative. Across human space, the transformation was happening everywhere. The cargo ship Steady Prophet docked at Titan Station and emerged 12 hours later, with its holds full of missiles instead of grain. The passenger liner Safe Harbor had its luxury suites converted into fighter bays. Even the scientific research vessel Quiet Contemplation was being fitted with weapons that could punch through alien armor, Captain Tejo commanded. A small exploration ship called the Peaceful Dawn. For 10 years, he had used it to map new star systems and study cosmic phenomena. When the call came, he was 3 days from Earth, heading home with a cargo hold full of interesting rocks. A Vorthak patrol fleet intercepted him at the edge of the system. Human vessel. This is Warship Bloodclaw, came the transmission. You will surrender for questioning about terrorist activities. Comply immediately or be destroyed. Tejo looked at his small crew. His weapons officer was Jin Wu, a young man who had been studying to be a musician before this happened. His pilot was so young, a grandmother who had retired from the merchant fleet to see the galaxy. "They think we're terrorists," Teho said quietly. "Sir, they killed children," Jinwoo replied. His hands moved over weapons controls that hadn't existed a week ago. "What does that make them?" Teho opened a channel to the Vorthak fleet. "Bloodclaw, this is Captain Teho of the Peaceful Dawn. Negative on the surrender. I have a daughter back home who will never see her father be afraid." The Vorthak ship fired first as expected. Their plasma beams struck the Peaceful Dawn's shields, which held easily. The aliens had expected to destroy a helpless civilian vessel. Instead, the Peaceful Dawn returned fire with weapons that had been theoretical until last week. The beam that struck the Bloodclaw didn't just penetrate its armor, it vaporized half the ship instantly. "This is impossible," screamed the Vorthak commander. "You're civilians. You're scientists." "We're humans," Teho replied as his ship destroyed 2 more Vorthak vessels. "And you hurt our children." The lone surviving Vorthak ship fled, carrying news that shook the Empire. The weak humans had weapons that could destroy military vessels with single shots. Their civilian ships were fighting like warships. Back on the Vorthak homeworld, Overlord Krex read the reports with growing concern. The humans were supposed to file protests and ask for mediation. Instead, their entire civilian fleet was turning into a navy. "This is just posturing," he told his war council. "They want to negotiate from a position of strength. We'll show them that threats don't work on the Vorthak Empire." He ordered the execution of 1,000 human prisoners to teach them their place. It was the worst mistake in Vorthak history. The recordings of the executions reached Earth 6 hours later. Admiral Bo Young watched them once, then deleted them from her personal files. But she would never forget what she had seen. "How many ships do we have ready?" she asked Captain Sujin. 2,847, ma'am. Everything from heavy cruisers to converted fishing boats. Every human who can hold a weapon wants to come. Bo Young looked at the star charts showing Vorthak space. They had 36 worlds and the most powerful military in their region of the galaxy. They thought they were unbeatable. "Send the order," she said quietly. "All ships are to form up at Rally Point Alpha. We launch in 18 hours. "Ma'am, what are our rules of engagement?" Bo Young thought about Nari's recording, about the executions, about children hiding under desks while alien soldiers hunted them for sport. "Bring our people home," she said. "All of them. Whatever it takes." As the human fleet assembled, the galaxy watched in growing alarm. The peaceful builders were revealing weapons and ships that violated every treaty they had signed. Their diplomats were being recalled. Their merchant vessels were requesting military escorts. The Vorthak Empire had wanted to test human resolve. They were about to learn that some tests have consequences that last forever. Admiral Bo Young's fleet jumped into hyperspace toward Vorthak territory. Behind them, Earth's orbital shipyards worked around the clock, building more vessels for the war that was coming. The age of human patience was over. The age of human wrath had begun. Captain Dongsu stood on the bridge of the New Sol, watching the stars shift as his ship dropped out of hyperspace. After 3 months of travel, they had finally reached Haven's Rest. His daughter Nari lived on this peaceful world, studying the strange plants and animals that made the planet so special. He smiled, thinking about seeing her again. "Captain, we're not getting any response from the colony," said his communications officer, Young-sik. The young man's voice carried worry. "All channels are silent," Dongsu frowned. Haven's Rest was home to over 2 million people. The planet should be buzzing with radio traffic, ship movements, and the normal sounds of a busy world. "Try again. Maybe there's interference from the solar storms." But as they got closer to the planet, Dongsu's heart began to sink. Where green fields and silver cities should have sparkled in the sunlight, he saw only dark scars and broken glass. The orbital stations that should have greeted them were twisted metal floating in space. "Dear God," whispered the navigation officer, Kyung-ho. "What happened here?" Dongsu ordered his ship to scan the planet's surface. The results made his blood turn cold. The cities were gone. Not damaged, completely gone. In their place were circles of melted glass that still glowed with radiation. The readings showed the kind of destruction that came from military-grade plasma weapons. "Sir, I'm picking up some emergency beacons," Young-sik reported. "Very weak signals from the southern continent." "Take us down," Dongsu ordered. His voice was steady, but his hands shook as he thought about Nari. They landed near what used to be New Busan, the planet's largest city. 3 million people had lived here just a week ago. Now there was only a crater filled with cooling glass. The Geiger counter clicked rapidly as the landing team put on radiation suits. Dong-Su found the first bodies near the research station where Nari worked. They had been civilians, farmers, teachers, children. The way they lay told a terrible story. These people had been running when they died. Captain over here called Dr. Min Jung, the ship's medical officer. She was kneeling beside a damaged computer terminal that somehow still worked. I found something. The screen flickered to life, showing Nari's face. Dong-Su's daughter looked tired and scared. Behind her, he could hear explosions and screaming. If anyone finds this, you need to know what happened, Nari said in the recording. Her voice was calm, but tears ran down her face. The Vorthak came 3 days ago. They said they were just patrolling the border, but they had invasion fleets. They didn't want to take our world. They wanted to hurt us. The recording showed Nari looking over her shoulder as another explosion shook the building. They're not just killing us. They're taking people alive. I heard them talking about experiments. They want to study humans like we're animals. They think we're weak because we choose peace. Nari looked directly into the camera. Dad, if you're watching this, I love you. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them the Vorthak think being peaceful makes us easy targets. Tell them. Another explosion, closer this time. Tell them they made it personal. The recording cut off. Dong-Su stared at the blank screen for a long time. Around him, his crew searched through the ruins looking for survivors. They found emergency shelters that had been broken open from the outside. Medical stations that had been bombed while treating wounded. Schools where children had hidden under desks that couldn't protect them. Sir, Young-Sik called from his portable radio. The other search teams are reporting the same thing everywhere. The whole planet is like this. They estimate over 2 million dead. And, sir, there are signs that about 50,000 people were taken alive. Dong-Su closed his eyes. In the 100 years since humans had joined the Galactic Council, they had been known as the Builders. They terraformed dead worlds into gardens. They built space stations that were marvels of engineering. They solved problems that other species couldn't even understand. When there were conflicts between alien races, humans were the mediators who found peaceful solutions. The galaxy saw humans as soft, gentle, too civilized to fight. They were wrong. Dong-Su remembered his grandfather's stories about the old wars on Earth, before humans reached the stars. Stories about what people would do when their families were threatened. Stories about a species that had once been so dangerous that they nearly destroyed their own world. Humans had chosen to be better than that. They had chosen peace and cooperation. But choice was the important word. It was always a choice. Young-Sik, send a message to Earth, Dong-Su said quietly. Tell them what we found here. Tell them about the recordings. And send a copy to Admiral Bo Young at Terran Defense Command. What should I say, sir? Dong-Su looked at the ruins around him. Somewhere out there, his daughter and 50,000 other humans were being tortured by aliens who thought humanity was weak. Tell them the children are in danger. Tell them it's time to come home. Tell them to come armed. As the new soul lifted off from the dead world, Dong-Su thought about the last conversation he'd had with Nari. She had been excited about her research, about the new flowers she'd discovered that only bloomed at night. She had asked him to bring her more books from Earth when he visited next month. Now she was gone, taken by creatures who saw humans as laboratory animals. The Galactic Council would want meetings. They would want to discuss diplomatic solutions and economic pressures. They would want humans to be reasonable and civilized. But Dong-Su remembered something his grandfather had told him. Son, we're not peaceful because we're weak. We're peaceful because we know what we're capable of when we're not. The Vorthak had just reminded humanity what they were capable of. As his ship jumped into hyperspace, carrying the news that would change everything, Dong-Su made a promise to his daughter's memory. The Vorthak thought humans were weak because they chose peace. They were about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being unable to fight. The message reached Earth 12 hours later. Admiral Bo Young read the reports 3 times before she understood what she was seeing. Then she walked to her safe and opened a file marked Protocol 7, open only in case of genocide. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had once been the most dangerous species on their own planet.